You saw the title right. I'm quitting Airbnb. No, it's not clickbait. It just doesn't make sense anymore.
So today I'll get into why I'm quitting, what the last straw was for me, and what I'm planning on doing with this house now.
As you guys know, hosting on Airbnb wasn't as profitable as I expected, but it was a generally good experience. But something changed recently, and it is the nail on the coffin for Airbnbs in California.
It's a new bill that's introducing an additional 15% tax anytime you go to book an Airbnb in California.
It's called SB 584, and they're rushing to get this into effect by 2025.
So this is a big deal because anytime you go to book a hotel or a short-term rental, you're already taxed a transient occupancy tax, and it's usually around 10%. It's a little different in each city. You can see it's usually 10%. And this new unprecedented tax is on top of the transient occupancy tax.
On its own, the TOT tax brings in a lot of money for Palm Springs. In 2023, it's estimated to be about $50 million. So hotels and short-term rentals bring in a ton of money for our city. It's the biggest revenue source. And additionally, Airbnbs are taxed on any profit that they make as well. So it's not like Airbnbs aren't paying taxes. But still, SB 584 is presenting a tax like I've never seen before, like higher than the TOT tax. That's kind of wild.
So this is good news to a lot of people because I know a lot of you guys now hate Airbnb. And I get it. The tax money is to go towards building affordable housing units.
Currently, the city only spends $3 million of their budget on an affordable housing reserve. Most of the money goes to general government and the police.
It all sounds really great in theory, but will it actually work? And what am I gonna do with my house? Let's get into it.
First, we need to look at how this affects if you were to book my house.
Right now in November, it's kind of the slower season, so it's $575 a night. You end up paying $328 in taxes, so the reservation total is around $3,300. Now in 2025, when this whole thing goes into effect, it's gonna make it so that the taxes you pay are $749. So the total reservation goes from $3,300 to $3,745. The amount that you're paying in taxes is now more than the amount that you'd be paying for one night staying here. That's crazy. And the thing is, hotels don't have to enforce this tax. So whenever you go to California and stay in a hotel, you just pay the TOT tax, which is usually around 10%, depends on the city. So if you're a group of like 4 friends, I just don't see why you would ever stay in an Airbnb. It doesn't make sense. You're automatically gonna get a 15% discount by staying in a hotel. I mean, if I was looking to book a place in Palm Springs and I didn't own my house, I wouldn't book it. I would not book it if I had to pay 15% more. Like, are you crazy? Who would do that? Unless you absolutely need a house and you need the privacy, maybe you're like a 6-person group, but no, it just does not make sense. Keep in mind, this is a bill that is being passed all across California. It's not just Palm Springs. So if you're ever going to book an Airbnb in San Diego in 2025, I mean, just look at hotels. Just don't even bother anymore. Honestly, that's my thoughts on it.
So for me, this is the last straw. I think it'll just make it too tough to compete with hotels.
But I'm actually not selling my house.
I came up with a different plan for a number of reasons, and that is to turn it into a long-term rental. That is my plan in 2025. I'm 99% sure at this point that that's what I'm gonna do, although I will take the first month or 2 of the year and see how it is. I'll see if people are still booking, but I just don't think it makes sense. Like, I don't even wanna encourage people to pay that much in taxes when they can just go to a hotel. It's gonna be cheaper to get a couple hotel rooms for you and your friends, you know? So turning it into a long-term rental makes a lot more sense. You might be like, now why not sell it? Number 1 reason is because I love this house. I put so much work into it, and I also love Palm Springs. I could see myself maybe retiring here one day. So I don't want to let go of it when I already have this house and have put so much work into it and have locked in this low interest rate and all this, you know, no, I don't want to sell it. It's not purely an investment to me. I actually would like to use it again. It really just does not make sense to sell financially right now. If I sold it, I would just pay so much in capital gains taxes, and then I would go to buy something and I wouldn't even be able to get anything as good because the interest rates are so high. It doesn't really make sense to sell. But long-term renting it turns out, is looking like it would be quite profitable. Probably more profitable than Airbnb ever was, actually. I actually met one of my neighbors recently, and he told me that he turned his Airbnb into a long-term rental and he's making more. he's making more. Because you don't have to pay all the expenses, you don't have to pay for the utilities, Simply Safe, YouTube TV, the insane electric bill, the gas bill. Instead, the tenant pays for what they want and what they use. And the mortgage for my house right now, it's $3,200 a month. And Redfin and Zillow think I could rent this long-term for $6,200 a month. So if you guys haven't followed along with the Airbnb journey, you know I'm just barely breaking even. So to be making $2,000 a month in cash flow, now I'm skeptical if that's actually possible, but we'll see. That would be way better than doing Airbnb. Plus I wouldn't have to deal with all of the hassles that come with running an Airbnb. It's really not that bad, but you do think about it a lot, and there's always stuff that comes up that you need to be repurchasing. And with a long-term rental, there's a lot less of that. Additionally, just on a personal note, my parents live here in Palm Springs now, and my sister and her boyfriend also bought a house here, so I tend to just visit them and stay with them now than even use this house anyway. So I don't really care as much about having it as like a partial use vacation home. So here are my own personal thoughts on this bill, even though nobody asked. I'm gonna give them to you anyway. So this bill is to provide funding for affordable housing for the labor force. And honestly, if it does that and everything works out according to plan, I think that's great. Like, of course, we need more affordable housing, and teachers should be able to afford a house. I think we all agree with that. I think the issue is, I genuinely don't think it's going to do that. California makes a lot of money in taxes to begin with. It's estimated they're gonna bring $130 billion, with a B, in income taxes alone for 2022. So that's not to mention property taxes, sales tax. So I don't think the issue is funding. I think the money is there to build affordable housing. It's been there. California has always made a ton of money. It's just not ever being spent in the right way. And I don't wanna get too much into this, but like, clearly it's not. If we don't have affordable housing now, when we have so much money going to the government here, I personally think it's not fair to put the entire brunt of the lack of affordable housing on short-term rentals when so many things affect it. It's zoning laws, it's the fact that there's no incentives to build, so there's not enough new construction. It's the people who are landlords that own 10 to 100 units and just are hoarding those forever. Like, short-term rentals are a relatively new thing, and we've had an affordable housing problem long before short-term rentals. I think some people think that if everybody quits Airbnb, suddenly housing is going to be affordable, but it's not, because there's so many things that affect the housing market. I think what we're actually going to see happen is the city's going to bring in less revenue. There's going to be probably less Airbnbs. The reality of Palm Springs, and a lot of people don't want to hear this, but this is the truth about Palm Springs. Most of these homes are second houses. They're second houses for rich people. They're used for a few months of the year, and then the people who own them go back to Canada or Chicago or wherever they came from. It would be great if they can build more affordable housing, but I want to see the plan of how they're going to do it. There is no plan. I looked through the whole bill. There's no specific plans of how they're going to spend the money. I even reached out to the office of the senator that wrote it to interview her about it. They seemed interested actually in an interview, but then they ended up not responding. At this point, I can't actually tell if this thing has passed or not. I'm not here to convince you to vote on anything, because this actually isn't a bill that we as citizens can vote on. All in all, I don't love this bill. Of course, I'm biased as a short-term rental owner, but I also think it's just going to discourage people from traveling to Palm Springs. A lot of my guests are from out of state. They're from places that are really cold. Chicago, Oregon, Canada. And if they're having to pay 26% in taxes for a house, I actually think they might go to Florida or something. Let's be real, California probably already has the money for affordable housing. They just never allocate it to that. A reality, whichever comes first, hopefully affordable housing. In Texas, they are throwing up new houses all the time because it's easier to. And if they made it a little bit easier to here, streamline the permit process, make it faster, easier, cheaper to build, then it's just simple supply and demand. There would be a lot more houses. If we have an ample housing supply, then they just become more affordable by default. All right, I hope that you guys enjoyed this video and learned something. Comment down below what your thoughts are on this bill. I'd love to read it. We can have a discussion in the comments. Let's do that. And I will see you guys in my next video. Bye.